first step in constructing multiple choice questions is writing the STEM. In this short video, you will see some best practices for writing an effective STEM along with examples to illustrate those practices. We'll conclude with a final summary example and some key reminders for writing STEMs. An effective STEM presents a clear problem. On this slide, we see two examples. First, let's look at the question on the left. Which of the following is a true statement? This alone does not tell us anything. We only find out the main point of the question by reading through the responses. The main spirit, the main spirit, the main spirit. There is no spirit. On the right side, we see an example of an effective STEM. What is the spirit used to make a margarita? The problem is clear. The student needs to identify the spirit used to make the drink. In general, it is best to avoid writing questions with negative phrasing. On the left, we see a question. Which of the following is not a red wine grape? The content of this question can be restructured to avoid the negative phrasing. For example, to be able to differentiate between red and white grape varietals, the STEM could be, which grape is a white varietal? On the right, we see a question with a frame for negative phrasing. Here, this question was developed for a learning objective related to identifying the common symptoms of a choking victim. If the person was not able to speak or scream, they could tell us they were choking, which is not the case in a real situation. If you decide to use negative phrasing, do not forget to highlight the negative word. In this case, the word not is in bold and all caps. The only information that should be included in a question or STEM is information that is needed to answer the question. In this example, the first sentence might have accurate information. In fact, it does. These are all Irish whiskey brands. However, the information is not relevant or essential for the student to be able to select a response. We can remove this first sentence without any consequence. The STEM should consist of a complete question so that the student can focus on responding to that question. This is related to cognitive load, and responding with an answer is easier than looking at the different alternatives that could fit in with an existing structure. In the example on the left, we have the interior blank, where the students are asked to select the answer that fits. Light rum, coconut cream, and blank are blended with crushed ice to make a pina colada. The students have to go through the different responses in order to determine which one fits best. On the right, we have a clear question that the student has to respond to. What fruit juice is blended with rum and coconut cream to make a pina colada? We also see that the word juice is now in the STEM in order to avoid having it in the distractors. To summarize, let's look at a final example and then recap the key points. In the below example, we see a STEM stated as a question with a clear problem, identifying the first step in the sequence of service activities. This STEM is concise, without unnecessary information that might distract the reader from the main point. This example is one that follows the best practices of writing an effective STEM. Now, let's think back to what those best practices are. First, the STEM itself should present a clear problem. Next, the STEM should be stated negatively only if the learning outcomes require it. The STEM should not contain irrelevant material. And finally, the STEM should be stated as a question or a partial sentence.